If the words UI thread, async tasks, weak references scare you, press the back button on your web browser now. Welcome to Mobile Application Tutorials. My name's Nigel. In the previous tutorial, we attempted to fix the performance issues of the scrolling of our image browser with the Picasso library. That didn't give us the desired results that we wanted. So now we're going to use an alternative method. We're going to create what's called an async task, which means we're going to sort of do the heavy loading of the files onto another thread, which we call a background thread. Now phones such as this tend to have 4 cores, so they're comfortable for running for at least one thread on each core. So we can utilize our tasks in parallel, so to say, and take all the effort off the UI thread, giving your application a nice smooth experience and utilizing the power of the phone. So we're going to create an async task to do the loading of the images into the image views and take away all the sort of heavy loading that the UI task the UI thread is currently doing. But first, I'm going to show you how to remove a third-party library. We're no longer, at this moment in time, going to be using the Picasso library. We don't need it in our project, so let me show you how to remove a third-party project. Okay, first thing here, we can just delete this line of code. Save that. Now, it's going to be the reverse process of what we did to install the third-party library. So if we go into our build file and we delete the Picasso dependency, save that, and then take the mouse back up to the sync project with Gradle files, and we're going to resync it. And by resyncing our project with Gradle, in this particular case, because we've removed our dependency, we'll remove the third-party library. So let's wait for that to complete first. Completed, no longer have the Picasso third-party library here, so we can close this file here. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to create an async task. So go into our source. I'm going to create it into this package here. So I'm going to create a new class. And let's call it a bitmap worker task. Select OK. Okay, this class I created extends the async task. Here. Right, what I'm going to pass into the background thread is going to be the file, which is going to be the file that we load into the bitmap. So I'm going to provide the file here. This is for another function that we're not going to use in async task. And the last one's going to be the result of the background thread. We can feed it back into the UI thread. And this is going to be the bitmap. Okay. Right, now I just need to implement a function here. Implement some methods. So this function here is, this method here is what's going to operate on the background thread. And I want to create another function. I want to create the function that gets called, that we can call on the UI thread. So basically, after we've done all the work on the background thread, we can pass the result to the UI thread, and we're going to call this function. So this function that will be called on the UI thread is called OnPostexecute. And here we're going to be passing it the bitmap. Okay, so in the doBackground task, it's operating on the background thread. It's where we're going to load the file into the bitmap. So we want to return a bitmap here to the OnPostexecute. So if I do bitmap factory, decode file, and the parameters are going to be a file. It's going to be the first parameter and the path of that. So we're going to pass the path of the file that we're feeding to the async task to return the bitmap from this function here. Okay, now before I go any further, when you're using async tasks, in other words, you're running your operation on a background thread, you can have garbage collector problems. The garbage collector might lose track of your objects. Our object in this particular case is the ImageView, so we could lose track of that. So to resolve that potential issue, we can make a WeakReference. In other words, that allows the garbage collector to keep track of our image views inside the background threads. And if we switch away from the application at all, if necessary, the garbage collector can remove those objects and that will avoid any potential memory loss. Again, mobile phones do not like memory losses from the application, so this is quite an important step. So we'll add the WeakReference inside the class. And this WeakReference takes an image view. And we'll just call it ImageView reference. Okay, we'll need to initialize that ImageView reference, WeakReference, inside the class constructor. And it's going to take the actual image view itself. And we'll initialize it, ImageView WeakReference equals new WeakReference ImageView, and we're passing it the image view itself. So we'll now initialize that. Okay, so back down to the doInBackground, running the task on the background thread. Once we've loaded our bitmap, we want to return it to the UI thread. Inside the UI thread, we can actually display the image. So we're returning the bitmap from the doBackground and we're passing it to the OnPostexecute here. So we now have access to the bitmap on our UI thread. So let's load it. First thing we want to do, we want to check that there is actually a bitmap there. So just make sure it's not equal to null. And we also want to check our reference. We want to check the reference is still holding on to the image view. If not, we're not going to do anything. And we want to check to that is not equal to null. Okay, so if we actually got objects that have got content in them, next check, we want to check to see if we actually have an image view. So first of all, let's get our image view. So we're going to create an image view variable inside the method here, and then we're going to get the image view from the WeakReference just by calling get. So we now have access to the image view. Let's check to see if there's actually an image view there. Let me just append this name to give it a bit more context. So if view image, I think you get the idea. View image is not equal to null. So in other words, if we actually have the image view still there, hasn't been collected by the garbage collector. So we've actually got the image view there. And it's just a matter of set bitmap, and we've got the bitmap as an argument provided to us from the background task. So we'll just put that in there. Okay, that's the completion of the bitmap worker task. It's an async task class. So basically, we're doing the heavy lifting on another thread. It could be running on another core. And then once we've got the actual bitmap, we're passing it to the UI view to actually be assigned to the image view. And we're just doing checks to see that our objects actually have got content as well. Okay, the next step is now to actually call our async task. And that gets called from our image adapter from the recycle view tutorial series that we did before. So go into the image adapter here. And first thing we need to do is create the bitmap worker task object. I'm just going to call it worker task. And this is actually going to take the image view that's supplied through the onBind view holder. And that gets passed through to the constructor here. So the image files actually we get from the holder, if you recollect from the previous tutorial. And get image view. So we now have our object, and now we have to execute our async task like this. And it takes the image file here, and that's it. So basically all we've done here, instead of executing and loading the files to bitmaps on the UI thread, which we were doing previously, we're going to have that probably running on a different core and doing the work there. So we're using 2 cores now to do our work. We would expect to see a bit of a performance improvement. So let's see what happens. You'll also have to remove the Picasso import here because we've actually moved it out of the project. Okay, let's now run that. And let me just record what's happening on the device. Okay, so we know that something's happening there. We are displaying images. Let's scroll. Okay, we're still not seeing great performance here. But trust me, we are on the right path now. We're running things on an alternative background thread. The next steps we're going to make forward now, we're going to provide further optimizations, but we need to set up this async task as the reference, the base, to start applying further performance enhancers. So that's all the coding we're going to do. Okay, as with our normal tutorials, we're actually going to step through the code that we changed just to reinforce the new methods that we learnt inside our async task. So we'll do that now. So let's go back into our bitmap worker task. We'll put one inside the constructor, one inside the loading the actual file itself into a bitmap, and one when we're running on back on the UI thread. And let's go into the image adapter and add one into the onBind view holder where we actually get supplied with our image view. That should be enough. And as usual, just select the debug app. application's now running. I've now hit my first breakpoint. Okay, this is on OnBind holder. So basically in the recycler view adapter, it's asking me for some bitmaps to load into the image views that it's supplying me. So we step down to the next one. And now we've actually gone into my bitmap async worker task. We're inside the constructor. All we're doing here is passing our ImageView to a WeakReference so the garbage collector can keep track of that ImageView that's running on a different thread. And let's see it step through again. Okay, so I've now gone to actually executing the code on our background thread. That's the worker task execute. Let's select go. I'm going to remove, this is going to happen several times because I've got a grid of several images. It's going to be loading the images into the bitmaps into the images. So I'm going to remove this breakpoint now and carry on because we're creating several background tasks. Okay, next step is we've actually now gone into one of the background threads, and here's where we actually load the bitmap from the file. Continue on. After the bitmap's been loaded, we then pass it from the background thread to the UI thread. OnPostexecute we know is running on the UI thread. We'll just do some checks here. Check to see that we have a bitmap and we've still got the reference to the image view. And we're jumping. Let me just remove this breakpoint. Press go here. Okay, what was happening there was it's jumping back into the background thread before I could execute the code on the foreground thread. It was just a debugger. So anyway, back to our UI thread. We've checked that. Now we actually create image view from the WeakReference. Get it back. And check to see we actually have an image view there. We do, so let's load the image into the image view. Carry on executing. And we can remove that as well just to keep the application running. So basically, this is going to be extremely slow. I'm running on the debugger, which is executing a lot more mapping code. So successfully did that. So from this tutorial, we learnt how doing too much on your UI thread is going to cause a big performance problem on your application. So the right method is to utilize the hardware in your phone, utilize the other cores, and to run threads onto those other cores, which we tend to refer as a background thread. So we learned how to create an async task. We learned how to load our bitmaps from the files on the background thread and then return the bitmap to the UI thread by utilizing the OnPostexecute function that's given to us from the async task. So that's all for this one. You notice we still got performance problems, but now we've got a framework to start fixing those performance problems properly, and further tutorials after this one will show you how to do that. We will get there in the end. Anyway, if you like my tutorials, please subscribe. That's all for this one. Bye for now. Okay, this is looking promising. Application hasn't crashed, and you can probably see. There it is there. Now let's scroll. Okay, wow, big difference. Something basic, only load the actual file, only load the bitmap that matches your required image views. Makes a huge difference here. We'll take a few more photos, just a couple more.